Jake Morrison hated Tuesdays. Not because they were particularly worse than any other day, but because Tuesdays meant deliveries to the upper decks of New Terra Station, where the fancy shops and museums Saturday. Where people looked at him like he was invisible, just another guy in a brown uniform carrying boxes. He'd been working for Starship Express for 3 years now. 3 years of scanning packages, riding cargo elevators, and dodging alien tourists who never watched where they were going. The pay was terrible, his apartment was the size of a closet, and his mom back on Earth kept asking when he'd go back to college. But hey, at least the job was simple. Pick up box, deliver box, repeat. Today's route had him sweating already, and it wasn't even noon. 4 to 7 packages scattered across 12 different locations. His supervisor, a grumpy guy named Rick who seemed to hate everyone equally, had dumped an extra load on him because Tommy called in sick. Again. Jake checked his scanner as he rode the elevator to Deck 7. Package for the Galactic Museum, Antiquities Wing. Fragile. Handle with care. Of course it was fragile. Everything going to museums was fragile. He'd learned that the hard way after accidentally denting a box containing some 4,000-year-old pottery from Mars. Rick had made him pay for the insurance claim out of his own paycheck. The museum's entrance was all polished stone and holographic displays showing off ancient civilizations. A couple of tourists, some bug-like aliens from the Centauri sector, were taking photos near a replica of an Earth dinosaur. Jake walked past them toward the restricted wing, flashing his delivery credentials to the security drone. Inside the Antiquities Wing, the lighting was dimmer, more atmospheric. Glass cases lined the walls, filled with artifacts from dead civilizations across the galaxy. Pottery, weapons, jewelry, things Jake couldn't even identify. At the far end, he spotted his contact, Professor Valen, a tall alien with 4 arms and smooth purple skin. The Velixian was examining something under a magnifying lens. "Got a package for you, Professor," Jake called out, trying not to drop his voice to a whisper like everyone else did in museums. Professor Valen looked up, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "Ah, yes. The fragment from the dig site on Kepler 442b. Please, bring it here carefully." Jake walked forward, the package clutched in both hands. It wasn't even that heavy, maybe 5 pounds, but something about the professor's tone made him nervous. His foot caught on the edge of a floor mat he hadn't noticed, and suddenly he was stumbling forward, arms windmilling as he tried to keep his balance. The package slipped. Jake caught it inches from the ground, his heart hammering. Oh man, he muttered, straightening up. Relief flooded through him. Crisis avoided. Rick would have killed him if he'd broken another artifact. But the words that came out of his mouth weren't quite right. They felt heavy on his tongue, syllables that shouldn't exist, sounds that rumbled up from somewhere deep in his chest. HFY Rom Silikuan. Jake froze. What the hell was that? He hadn't meant to say those words. He didn't even know those words. It was like his mouth had moved on its own, speaking a language he'd never heard before. Professor Valen dropped his magnifying lens. The sound of it hitting the floor echoed through the quiet room. The alien's eyes were wide, all 4 of them locked on Jake with an expression that might have been shock. Or fear. Maybe both. "What did you just say?" Valen whispered. I don't know. I was just apologizing for almost dropping." More words poured out, unbidden. Jake's jaw moved and strange sounds emerged, flowing together in sentences that felt ancient and powerful. He wanted to stop, tried to clamp his mouth shut, but the words kept coming like water through a broken dam. Around them, the artifacts began to glow. A soft blue light emanated from the cases, from the pottery and weapons and strange devices that Jake couldn't name. The light pulsed in rhythm with his words. Valen stumbled backward, 2 of his hands reaching for a communication device on his belt. "Security. Security to Antiquities Wing immediately." "Wait, what's happening?" Jake managed to force out in normal English. "I didn't do anything." "You spoke Velkar," Valen said, his voice shaking. "The dead language of the Star Kings. That's impossible. No one can speak that language. It died 50,000 years ago. The linguistic structure is incompatible with modern neural patterns. You shouldn't be able to." Security drones burst through the door, followed by 2 armed guards. One was human, the other a stocky Krellian with tusks. Both had their weapons drawn but looked confused about what they were supposed to be aiming at. "Sir, what's the emergency?" the human guard asked. Valen pointed a trembling finger at Jake. This human just spoke pure Velkar. Fluently. "Activate lockdown protocols. No one leaves this wing. And contact Central Command. Tell them we have a Code Zenith situation. Jake's mind was racing. Code Zenith? What the hell was Code Zenith? He was just a delivery guy. He'd never even heard of the Star Kings before, let alone their language. Look, there's been some kind of mistake, Jake said, holding up his hands. I'm just here to deliver a package. I don't know what I said, I don't even. But as he spoke, he realized with growing horror that he understood the words that had come from his mouth. Not in English, not translated, but understood them the way you understand your native language. The artifacts around him weren't just glowing, they were responding to him, recognizing something in his voice. The package he'd been delivering sat forgotten on a nearby table. Whatever was inside it was humming now, vibrating with the same blue light as everything else in the room. Within minutes, the entire wing was sealed. More guards arrived, then scientists, then people in expensive suits who looked like government officials. They all stared at Jake like he was some kind of alien himself. Professor Vallin was on his communicator, speaking rapidly in 3 different languages. Jake caught fragments: unprecedented situation, genetic impossibility, notify the council. Jake's phone buzzed in his pocket. Rick, probably wondering why he was taking so long on one delivery. There were still 4 to 6 other packages waiting on his cart outside. But somehow, Jake had a feeling his delivery route was the least of his problems right now. A woman in a white lab coat approached him, scanning him with some kind of handheld device. Her name tag read Dr. Emily Bennett, Xenolinguistics Division. This is incredible, she whispered, looking at her scanner readings. Your neural patterns they're changing in real time. How long have you been able to speak Velka? Since about 5 minutes ago, Jake said weakly. Look, I really don't know what's going on. Can someone please just explain what's happening to me? Dr. Bennett looked at him with something between fascination and pity. I think you'd better sit down. This is going to be a long conversation. Jake woke up in a room he didn't recognize. White walls, bright lights, and the steady beep of medical equipment. For a confused moment, he thought maybe he'd been in an accident. Then the memories came flooding back, the museum, the strange words, the glowing artifacts. He tried to sit up, but his head spun. A hand gently pressed him back down. Easy there. Your brain's been through a lot in the past 12 hours. Jake turned to see a woman in her 30s with tired eyes and a coffee-stained lab coat. Dr. Emily Bennett. He remembered her from the museum, the one with the scanner. Where am I? His voice came out scratchy. Medical research facility, government sector. Don't worry, you're not under arrest or anything. Technically. She pulled up a chair beside his bed. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. What happened to me? Emily pulled out a tablet, swiping through images that looked like brain scans. That's what we've been trying to figure out. Jake, I'm going to be straight with you because I think you deserve the truth. What happened at the museum wasn't random. It wasn't some weird accident. She turned the tablet toward him. The scans showed his brain lit up in different colors, sections highlighted that meant nothing to Jake. This is your brain from 6 months ago. Standard physical you had for your delivery job. She swiped to another image. This is your brain now. See these areas here, and here? These neural pathways didn't exist yesterday. They are forming in real time. Your brain is literally rewiring itself. Jake stared at the images. That's not possible. Brains don't just change overnight. Exactly. They don't. Except yours is. Emily leaned forward. We ran your DNA through every database we have. You know what we found? Genetic markers that match fragments recovered from Star King archaeological sites. Jake, you've got alien DNA in your system. Ancient alien DNA. The room felt like it was tilting. I've got what? How is that even? I'm human. My parents are human. My grandparents were farmers in Ohio. You are human. Completely human. But somewhere way back in your family tree, your ancestors encountered the Star Kings. We think it happened during Earth's prehistoric period, maybe 50 or 60,000 years ago. Most humans carry trace amounts of these markers. It's dormant, inactive. But yours. She paused. Yours activated. Jake's mind was racing. Why? Why now? Why me? We call it the Inheritor Protocol. The Star Kings embedded something in the genetic code of dozens of species across the galaxy. It's like a lottery, random combinations trigger the activation. You just happen to win. Or lose, depending on how you look at it. A man in a military uniform entered the room. Colonel Brooks, according to his name tag. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Mr. Morrison, I need you to understand the situation you're in. The Star Kings ruled this galaxy 50,000 years ago. Their technology is so far beyond ours that we're basically cavemen playing with sticks. Their ruins are scattered across hundreds of planets, sealed tight. We've tried everything to open them, explosives, plasma cutters, quantum drills. Nothing works. Okay, so what does that have to do with me? Everything, Colonel Brooks said. Because you can open them. Last night, while you were sedated, we brought in a Star King artifact from storage. Just a small piece of a door panel. You know what happened when we put it near you? Even unconscious, even sedated, your presence made it light up. It responded to you. Emily pulled up another image on her tablet. This one showed text, weird, flowing symbols that hurt to look at. This is Velkar script. Scholars have been trying to decode it for 200 years. Thousands of researchers, millions of hours of work. The best we've managed is maybe 20% accuracy on basic symbols. She swiped to another page. Read this. Jake looked at the symbols. At first they were just alien squiggles, meaningless shapes. Then, like one of those optical illusions where suddenly you see the hidden image, they clicked into focus. The third archive contains records of the expansion period, catalogued by sector and cycle, Jake read aloud. Then he froze. Wait. How did I just read that? I don't know this language. You do now, Emily said quietly. That's what the Inheritor Protocol does. It's not just language, Jake. It's knowledge. 50,000 years of accumulated information, downloading directly into your brain. The Star Kings left behind an instruction manual, and you're the only person in the galaxy who can read it. Over the next few hours, they tested him. They brought artifact after artifact, tablet after tablet covered in indecipherable text. Jake read them all. Some were boring, inventory lists, maintenance logs. Others were fascinating, stories of distant worlds, descriptions of technologies that sounded like magic. But the more he read, the stranger he felt. It wasn't just understanding the words. It was like new thoughts were forming in his head, concepts that didn't have English equivalents. He'd look at a math problem and suddenly know the answer without calculating. He'd glance at a star chart and understand trajectories and gravitational wells without any training. This is freaking me out, Jake admitted after the 5th test. It feels like someone else's memories are in my head. That's essentially what's happening, Emily said. The genetic code isn't just enabling language comprehension. It's unpacking stored information. The Star Kings encoded knowledge into DNA itself. A new person entered the room, a thin man in an expensive suit with calculating eyes. He introduced himself as Director Hayes from the Galactic Security Council. Mr. Morrison, I need you to understand something. What you can do, what you've become, you're now the most valuable asset in known space. Every government, every corporation, every military power is going to want you. Some will want to use you. Others will want to study you. And some. He paused. Some will want to make sure nobody else can have you. Are you saying people want to kill me? I'm saying that in the last 6 hours, we've intercepted 17 different inquiries about the Velkar incident at the museum. The hegemony, the corporate alliance, the free colonies, they all know. And they're all mobilizing resources to either acquire you or eliminate you as a threat. Jake felt sick. Yesterday his biggest problem was making rent. Now he was apparently some kind of galactic prize that people would kill for. There's more you need to know, Emily said gently. We've been monitoring your neural activity. The changes aren't stopping. Every hour, new pathways are forming. You're becoming something more than human, Jake. We don't know what the end result will be. What do you mean, more than human? She showed him another scan. Your perception of time is changing. Your visual processing is operating at speeds that shouldn't be biological. You're starting to perceive wavelengths of light that humans can't normally see. The Star Kings weren't like us, Jake. They were something beyond. And their genetic legacy is trying to transform you into something closer to what they were. Jake looked at his hands. They looked normal. He felt normal. But as he focused, he realized he could see things he'd never noticed before, tiny variations in air temperature creating heat shimmer, the individual frequencies of light from the fluorescent bulbs, the micro-expressions on Emily's face that betrayed her worry. Can you stop it? He asked. We don't know. We're not even sure we should. Jake, you might be humanity's only chance to access technology that could change everything. Medical advances that could cure diseases, energy systems that could power entire planets, ships that could reach distant galaxies. All of that is locked away in Star King ruins, and you're the key. And what happens to me? Do I just stop being Jake Morrison? Do I turn into some kind of alien? Emily didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was soft. I don't know. But I promise you, we'll do everything we can to help you through this. You're not alone. Through the room's small window, Jake could see New Terra Station stretching out below. Millions of people going about their lives, completely unaware that a delivery driver had just become the most important, and most endangered, person in the galaxy. His phone, sitting on the bedside table, showed 4 to 7 missed calls from Rick. He almost laughed. Somehow, he didn't think he'd be finishing his delivery route anytime soon. The alarm woke Jake at 3 in the morning. Not his alarm, the facility's emergency system, blaring red lights and a mechanical voice repeating security breach in progress. Emily burst through his door, already dressed, a duffel bag slung over her shoulder. Get up. We need to move. Now. Jake rolled out of bed, still groggy. What's happening? Corporate hit squad. They've breached the outer perimeter. We've got maybe 5 minutes before they reach this wing. She tossed him clothes from the bag. Get dressed. I'm getting you out of here. Wait, you're helping me escape? Won't you get in trouble? Emily's jaw tightened. Jake, I've spent the last 3 days watching the council debate what to do with you. Half of them want to lock you in a lab and study you until you break. The other half want to hand you over to the highest bidder. Nobody's asking what you want. Nobody cares that you're a person, not a weapon. Jake pulled on pants and a jacket, his hands shaking. The strange knowledge in his head was growing stronger by the hour. He could hear the electronic hum of the security systems, could almost feel the vibrations of footsteps 3 floors below. His senses were sharpening in ways that felt both incredible and terrifying. A guard appeared at the door, David Cole, one of the few who'd actually treated Jake like a human being over the past few days. Dr. Bennett, the transport's ready. But we've got problems. They've locked down the main hangar. Then we use the service tunnels. Can you get us there? David nodded, pulling out a pistol. Stay close and stay quiet. They moved through corridors Jake had never seen before, industrial passages meant for maintenance crews. The facility was massive, and the deeper they went, the older everything looked. Pipes dripped condensation. The lights flickered. Where are we going? Jake whispered. Off station, Emily said. There's a place we can hide, at least temporarily. A Star King ruin on a planet called Krell. It's been studied for decades, but nobody's ever gotten past the outer chambers. With you, though. You think I can open it? I think it's our only shot at finding answers. The Star Kings left these genetic markers for a reason. If we can figure out why, maybe we can understand what's happening to you. Maybe we can control it. An explosion rocked the corridor behind them. Shouts echoed through the metal walls. They're through, David said, checking his weapon. Move faster. They ran. Jake's legs pumped, his breathing steady despite the sprint. Another change, his endurance was increasing. He should be winded, but he felt like he could run for miles. The service tunnel opened into a small hangar bay, barely big enough for the beat-up transport ship waiting there. It looked like a civilian cargo hauler, the kind that wouldn't attract attention. That's our ride? Jake asked. It's not pretty, but it's fast and it's off the books, Emily said. Get in. They scrambled aboard. David took the pilot's seat, fingers flying over controls. The engines whined to life. Through the viewport, Jake could see security forces pouring into the hangar. Hang on, David muttered, and punched the throttle. The ship lurched forward, scraping against the hangar's magnetic field as they burst through. Alarms shrieked. Warning lights flashed. But then they were in open space, New Terra Station falling away behind them. They're launching pursuit ships, David said, watching his sensors. 3 fighters, military grade. We're not going to outrun them in this bucket. Jake felt something click in his mind. He looked at the sensor display and suddenly understood it in a way he never had before. The physics of pursuit, the trajectories, the energy signatures. Take us toward the asteroid field at coordinates 447 to 889. There's a debris cloud that'll mess with their targeting. David glanced back. How do you know that? I just do. And he did. The knowledge was there, as clear as if he'd studied navigation for years. David shrugged and changed course. Your brain, your call. They dove into the asteroid field, rocks the size of buildings tumbling through space around them. The pursuit fighters followed, but Jake kept calling out directions: turn here, drop 30 degrees, cut engines now. His mind was processing information faster than the ship's computer. One by one, the fighters fell back, unable to match their erratic course through the debris. After 20 minutes of cat and mouse, they were alone in the black. Emily stared at Jake with something between amazement and concern. You just out-navigated military pilots with decades of training. Yeah, Jake said quietly. I noticed. The trip to Krell took 2 days. 2 days of jumping between systems, laying false trails, and staying off main shipping lanes. Jake spent most of the time trying to process what was happening to him. The changes were accelerating. He could see better in the dark now. He could hear conversations through the ship's walls. Math problems that would have stumped him in high school now seemed childishly simple. And the language, he was dreaming in Velka, thinking in concepts that didn't translate to English. Emily ran tests when she could, monitoring his neural activity with portable equipment she'd grabbed. The readings made her frown more each time. Talk to me, Jake said on the second night. What are you seeing? She set down her scanner. Your brain is restructuring faster than I predicted. At this rate, in a few weeks you might not be able to communicate in human languages anymore. The neural pathways for English, for normal human thought, they're being overwritten. So I'm turning into something else. Yes. And I don't know how to stop it. I'm not even sure we should stop it. Jake, the knowledge you're gaining, it's incredible. You navigated us through that asteroid field like you'd been flying for decades. What else might you be capable of? What if I don't want to be capable of more? What if I just want to be me? Emily didn't have an answer for that. Krell appeared on their view screen on the third day, a dead world, brown and lifeless, its surface scarred by ancient wars. Scattered across the planet were structures that gleamed even from orbit, buildings that had survived 50,000 years without weathering. The ruins cover about 30% of the planet's surface, Emily explained as they descended. It was some kind of administrative center for the Star Kings. Libraries, records halls, things we think were universities. But everything's sealed. The doors won't open, the systems won't activate. It's like the whole planet is waiting for something. For someone who can speak Velka, Jake said. Exactly. They landed near one of the larger structures, a massive pyramid that rose hundreds of feet into the thin atmosphere. The surface was smooth, metallic, covered in flowing script that seemed to shift in the light. Jake stepped out of the ship, and immediately felt it. A pull, like a magnet drawing him forward. The air hummed with energy. The ground beneath his feet vibrated with a frequency he could feel in his bones. It knows I'm here, he whispered. Emily and David followed him toward the pyramid's entrance, a massive door that had defeated every attempt to open it for 200 years. Jake approached slowly, his heart pounding. Words rose in his throat, unbidden. The same ancient syllables that had started all of this back at the museum. But this time, he understood them. This time, he meant them. Kethvie rom silikuan, telmars beterai velka. The door responded. Light traced along its edges, symbols flaring to life. With a sound like thunder, the massive structure began to open. Oh my God, Emily breathed. It's working. The door swung wide, revealing darkness beyond. But it wasn't empty darkness. Jake could see lights flickering to life in the depths, systems activating after millennia of sleep. What's in there? David asked, his hand on his weapon. Jake stepped forward, drawn by that magnetic pull. Answers. I think the Star Kings left something for people like me. For the inheritors. But as they crossed the threshold, none of them noticed the ships entering orbit high above. Military vessels, corporate cruisers, and something else, an ancient ship that looked like it had been built by the Star Kings themselves, crewed by beings who had waited 50,000 years for this moment. The hunt for Jake Morrison had only just begun. The inside of the pyramid was nothing like Jake expected. The walls weren't dusty or ancient, they glowed with soft blue light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The air smelled clean, almost sterile, as if the ventilation system had been running continuously for 50,000 years. This is incredible, Emily whispered, running her scanner over everything. The power systems are still operational. Everything's in perfect condition. Jake walked deeper into the structure, following corridors that seemed to know where he wanted to go. Doors opened before he reached them. Lights brightened as he passed. The entire building was responding to him like a living thing. They entered a massive chamber that stretched hundreds of feet overhead. The walls were covered floor to ceiling in flowing Velkar script, and in the center stood something that looked like a control console mixed with a piece of art. Crystalline structures jutted from a circular platform, each one glowing with different colors. "What is this place?" David asked, his voice echoing. Jake touched the console and information flooded his mind. Not words exactly, but understanding. Pure knowledge downloaded directly into his brain. "It's a library. A teaching center. The Star Kings built thousands of these across the galaxy." "Teaching what?" Emily asked. Before Jake could answer, a voice spoke from the shadows. Not in English, but in Velkar. Jake understood it perfectly. "Teaching the unworthy to destroy themselves, just as we did." They spun around. Standing at the chamber's entrance was an alien Jake had never seen before, tall and impossibly thin, with skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its eyes were ancient, tired, filled with sadness that felt older than stars. "Who are you?" David demanded, raising his weapon. The alien raised a long-fingered hand. David's gun flew from his grip and clattered across the floor, pulled by some invisible force. "I am Elder Voss of the Silent Order. I am a cross, and my people served the Star Kings for 10,000 years. We watched them rise. We watched them fall. And we have waited here, generation after generation, to prevent anyone from following their path." Jake felt his heart racing, but something in Voss's voice wasn't threatening. It was pleading. "You're here to stop me. I am here to show you the truth before it's too late." Voss moved to the console, his movements graceful and deliberate. He touched one of the crystals and the chamber came alive. Images filled the air around them, holographic projections so real Jake felt like he could touch them. They showed cities beyond imagination, structures that defied physics, ships that moved between dimensions. The Star Kings in their glory, a civilization that had mastered reality itself. "They were magnificent," Voss said softly. "At their peak, the Star Kings controlled 70% of this galaxy. They had defeated death, conquered disease, achieved what every civilization dreams of. And it was not enough." The images shifted. Jake watched as the Star Kings began to change. Their cities grew stranger, more abstract. Their ships bent space in ways that hurt to look at. The beings themselves started to look less physical, more like patterns of light and energy. "Velkar is not just a language," Voss continued. "It is a tool. A weapon. A key that unlocks the fundamental structure of reality. Speak it with true understanding, and the universe rewrites itself around your words." The Star Kings discovered this. At first, they used it carefully, small changes, minor adjustments to physics. But power corrupts, young inheritor. Especially power over reality itself. Emily was staring at the images, her face pale. What did they do? Everything. They rewrote the laws of thermodynamics to create infinite energy. They altered causality to undo mistakes. They edited their own biology to transcend physical form. Each change seemed small, justified, necessary. But reality is not meant to be rewritten. It has structure, balance. They broke it. The hologram showed cities collapsing, not into rubble but into impossible geometries. Jake watched Star Kings fade from existence, their bodies dissolving into patterns of light that spiraled into nothingness. Some became trapped between dimensions, frozen in moments that never quite existed. Others fragmented across time itself, experiencing every moment of their lives simultaneously until their minds shattered. "They didn't evolve beyond physical form," Jake whispered, the horrible truth dawning on him. "They destroyed themselves." "Yes." Voss turned to face him fully. "They spoke themselves out of existence. The more they used Velkar, the more they understood it, the less human, less real, they became. In the end, they weren't even conscious beings anymore. Just patterns of information scattered across the quantum foam of spacetime. A cautionary tale written in the language of the universe itself." David had retrieved his gun but wasn't pointing it at anyone. Then why leave the genetic markers? Why give this power to other species? "A warning," Voss said. "Or perhaps a test." The Star Kings, in their final moments of clarity, seeded dozens of species with the Inheritor Protocol. Not to create new Star Kings, but to teach the lesson through experience. They gave the power to ordinary individuals, delivery drivers, farmers, janitors, people who would understand the weight of what they carried before they understood how to use it. Jake felt sick. He looked at his hands, remembering how easily he'd read the ancient texts, how naturally the navigation calculations had come. "This knowledge in my head, it's poison. It's going to do to me what it did to them. Eventually, yes, Voss said gently. I have watched 17 inheritors over my lifetime. Some lasted years before the transformation took them. Others, mere months. The more you use Velkar, the faster you change. The knowledge builds on itself, compounds, until you can no longer remember what it was like to be limited by normal reality. And then you begin to experiment. To push boundaries. To rewrite things. There has to be a way to stop it, Emily said desperately. The genetic changes, if we can reverse them. We tried that with the third inheritor my order encountered. She was a brilliant scientist who understood what was happening to her. We used every medical technology available. We even attempted to surgically remove the affected neural tissue. Voss's voice broke slightly. She died screaming in languages that unmade reality around her. The operating room existed and didn't exist simultaneously for 3 days before we could seal it. Jake sat down heavily on the steps leading to the console. His whole body felt numb. So that's it? I'm just going to slowly stop being human? Stop being me? There is one other option. Voss approached him carefully. The Star Kings, before they vanished completely, built a failsafe into these teaching centers. A way to seal the knowledge away. Not just in you, but in all potential inheritors across the galaxy. The genetic markers can be rewritten, permanently deactivated. No one would ever speak Velkar again. But the knowledge would be lost, Emily protested. The medical advances, the technology, everything that could help billions of people would remain locked away, Voss agreed. As it should be. Some doors are meant to stay closed. Some knowledge is too dangerous to possess. An alarm blared through the chamber. David checked his handheld communicator and cursed. We've got company. Multiple ships in orbit, and they're landing troops. Hegemony forces, at least 2 battalions. They'll be here in minutes. Voss's expression darkened. They felt the pyramid activate. Every major power has sensors watching these ruins. They know an inheritor is here, and they will not let you leave. They will take you, study you, force you to open every Star King facility in the galaxy. You will spend the rest of your short life as a key, turning locks for people who don't understand what they are unleashing. Jake stood, his mind racing. He could feel the power of the console behind him, could sense the vast systems of the pyramid responding to his presence. With a word, he could activate defenses that would make the approaching armies irrelevant. With a sentence, he could rewrite the physics of this entire planet to ensure his safety. The temptation was overwhelming. Show me, Jake said quietly. Show me how to end the protocol. How to lock this away forever. Emily grabbed his arm. Jake, think about this. You'd be giving up everything. The knowledge that could change the galaxy is the same knowledge that destroyed the most advanced civilization in galactic history, Jake interrupted. Emily, I can feel it happening. Every hour I get stronger, smarter, more capable. And every hour, I feel a little less like myself. I'm starting to think in ways that scare me. I look at problems and see solutions that involve rewriting fundamental laws of physics. That's not human. That's not who I want to be. The hegemony forces are landing, David warned. We need to decide now. Voss touched the console, and new symbols appeared, different from anything Jake had seen before. This is the shutdown sequence. Speak these words with true understanding, and the protocol ends. The ruins will seal themselves. The genetic markers will rewrite across every species that carries them. You will be the last inheritor, Jake Morrison. And the Star King's legacy will finally die. Through the pyramid's walls, Jake could hear the thunder of landing ships, the march of boots on ancient stone. An army was coming for him, and they would stop at nothing to possess what he could do. He looked at the symbols, understanding their meaning, their weight. One choice would make him a prisoner. The other would make him responsible for locking away wonders beyond imagination. But Jake was a delivery driver who'd stumbled into cosmic significance. He'd never asked for power. He'd never wanted to be special. Sometimes the greatest courage is knowing when to say no. The ground shook as hegemony drop ships landed outside the pyramid. Jake could hear them through the walls, hundreds of soldiers moving into position, heavy weapons being deployed, commanders shouting orders in a dozen different languages. They'd surrounded the entire structure. Emily was pulling at his arm. Jake, we need to think about this. Once you do this, there's no going back. All that knowledge, everything the Star Kings learned, gone forever. I know, Jake said, his eyes fixed on the symbols Voss had shown him. The shutdown sequence glowed on the console, waiting. His brain processed the words automatically, understanding their terrible finality. David was at the entrance, weapon ready. They're setting up breach charges. 2 minutes, maybe less. They'll kill you before they let you destroy this, Emily said desperately. Jake, even if you want to give up the power, they won't let you. You're too valuable. She was right. Jake could hear the tactical chatter now, his enhanced hearing picking up radio transmissions from outside. Target is inside with 2 accomplices. Orders are to acquire the inheritor alive. All other hostiles are expendable. Expendable. Emily and David would die because they'd helped him. Because they'd shown him kindness when the rest of the galaxy saw him as a tool to be used. Voss stood silent, watching Jake with those ancient, sad eyes. The choice is yours, inheritor. It always has been. That is the final lesson the Star Kings tried to teach, that power means nothing without the wisdom to refuse it. Jake's hands trembled as he reached toward the console. The symbols seemed to pulse, calling to him. But then he heard something else. Footsteps. Not the heavy boots of soldiers, but something lighter, faster. And they were coming from inside the pyramid, from deeper within. We're not alone, he said, spinning around. A doorway opened in the far wall, one Jake hadn't noticed before. Through it came figures, aliens, but not like any he'd seen. Their forms seemed to flicker, not quite solid, existing in multiple states at once. Some wore faces that shifted between species. Others looked almost human, then completely alien, then something in between. The silent order, Voss breathed, and Jake heard genuine fear in his voice for the first time. Not just me. They sent everyone. 12 beings entered the chamber, each one radiating age and power. They moved in perfect synchronization, forming a circle around the console. One of them spoke, its voice layered with harmonics that hurt Jake's ears. The inheritor must not seal the knowledge. The Star King's legacy belongs to those wise enough to wield it. We have studied for millennia. We are ready. You will open the archives and grant us access. No, Voss said firmly. The order decided. You decided, the being interrupted. But you are old, Voss. Old and frightened. We are the new generation. We will not make the Star King's mistakes. We will use their power to create paradise, not chaos. Jake felt his stomach drop. Even the people meant to guard against this power couldn't resist its temptation. The silent order had split, some wanting to preserve the warning, others wanting to claim the prize. An explosion rocked the pyramid. The hegemony forces were breaching the outer walls. Out of time, David muttered, checking his ammunition. The rebel silent order members moved closer. One reached toward Jake with a hand that existed in too many dimensions. Give us the knowledge, human. You are unworthy. We have prepared our entire lives. That's exactly why you can't have it, Jake said, and suddenly everything clicked into place. He understood now. The Star Kings hadn't left this test for the worthy. They'd left it for the unworthy, for people like him who never wanted power in the first place. Because wanting it, studying for it, preparing for it, that was already the first step toward corruption. The words came to his lips in Velkar, the shutdown sequence burning in his mind. But he couldn't just speak them. Not with these beings so close. They'd stop him, maybe kill him. He needed a distraction. Emily, he said quietly. When I start speaking, I need you to run. Both of you. Get to the ship and go. Don't look back. Jake, no. Please. This is my choice. Let me make it. Another explosion, closer this time. The hegemony was through the outer defenses. Soldiers would pour in any second. Jake closed his eyes and felt the full weight of the knowledge in his head. He could see equations that described the birth of universes. He understood forces that bent reality like clay. He knew the names of stars that burned before Earth existed. All of it was his, an inheritance from beings who'd touched the face of infinity. And he was going to throw it away. He opened his mouth and spoke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with absolute certainty. The words of Velkar flowed out, each syllable precise and final. The shutdown sequence. The rebel order members screamed and lunged for him, but Voss moved faster. The old alien threw himself between them and Jake, his body erupting with energy that sent the others flying backward. Go! Voss shouted to Emily and David. They ran. Jake kept speaking, even as the chamber filled with chaos. The console responded, light spreading from it like ripples on water. The pyramid began to hum, a sound that resonated in dimensions Jake couldn't name. Hegemony soldiers burst into the chamber, weapons raised. The rebel order members fought them, desperate to stop Jake, while Voss held the line. Energy blasts lit up the ancient walls. People were shouting, screaming, dying. Jake spoke through it all. The words came faster now, building toward the final phrase. He could feel it working, feel the genetic markers in his own DNA beginning to rewrite themselves. The knowledge in his head was fading, slipping away like water through his fingers. Around the galaxy, in ruins on hundreds of worlds, Star King facilities began to seal. Doors that had stood open for millennia closed with grinding finality. Systems that had waited 50,000 years for activation shut down permanently. And in the DNA of countless beings across dozens of species, microscopic changes rewrote the future. No more inheritors. No more temptation. No more warnings written in flesh and blood. Jake spoke the final word, and agony exploded through his brain. It felt like his skull was being torn apart from the inside. The knowledge that had made him more than human was being ripped away, neural pathways collapsing, memories dissolving. He screamed, but the sound came out in Velkar, the last words of a dead language that would never be spoken again. Then silence. Jake collapsed to his knees, gasping. The chamber was in ruins, smoke filling the air. Bodies lay scattered, soldiers, rebels, he couldn't tell anymore. Voss knelt nearby, his flickering form fading, using the last of his energy to smile at Jake. "Well done, inheritor," the old alien whispered. "You passed the test." Then he was gone, dissolving into light. The remaining hegemony soldiers stared at Jake, weapons raised but uncertain. Their commander stepped forward, scanning Jake with a device. He frowned, scanned again. "Sir?" one soldier asked. "His, normal. Just human. The readings are gone. Whatever made him special, it's not there anymore." They didn't shoot him. There was no point. Jake Morrison was just a delivery driver again, worth nothing to anyone. 3 months later, Jake stood outside the Starship Express depot on New Terra Station, wearing his brown uniform. Rick had been surprisingly forgiving about the medical emergency that had made Jake disappear for weeks. Or maybe he'd just been desperate for workers. Tommy had quit, and the holiday rush was coming. Jake grabbed his delivery scanner and started loading packages onto his cart. 43 deliveries today. His back already hurt just thinking about it. Emily had messaged him last week. She was back working at the Research Institute, though in a different department now. David had taken early retirement and bought a bar on some colony world. The government had quietly swept the whole incident under the rug, too embarrassing to admit they'd almost started a galactic war over one human. As Jake pushed his cart toward the elevator, he caught his reflection in a shop window. Just a regular guy. Average height, average build, nothing special. Exactly what he'd always been. Except sometimes, late at night, he dreamed in a language he no longer understood. And sometimes he'd catch himself looking at equations or star charts and feeling the ghost of knowledge he'd once possessed. It faded more every day, but traces remained, memories of memories, echoes of a power he'd held for just a brief moment. He delivered packages all day. Some people were rude. Some didn't tip. One old lady on Deck 9 gave him cookies, which was nice. It was boring work. Exhausting work. Underpaid work. It was his work, and he'd chosen it over reshaping reality. That evening, Jake returned to his tiny apartment, microwaved a burrito, and collapsed on his couch. His phone buzzed, Rick already sending tomorrow's route. 51 deliveries. Great. But Jake found himself smiling. The Star Kings had conquered the galaxy, mastered death, touched infinity itself. And where were they now? Gone. Dissolved into cosmic background radiation, a cautionary tale about the price of power. Jake Morrison would deliver packages until his back gave out, would struggle to pay rent, would live a completely unremarkable life. And he'd die old and human in himself, with no regrets about the godhood he'd walked away from. He finished his burrito and fell asleep on the couch, his delivery scanner still beeping with tomorrow's schedule. Just another Tuesday coming. Just another route to run. Just another delivery boy who'd once been offered the keys to the universe and had the wisdom to say no thanks, I'm good. Some packages, he'd learned, are too dangerous to deliver. And sometimes the greatest achievement isn't in receiving power, but in having the courage to send it back unopened.